Hey everybody, it's Kyle Nelson with Storybox. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, and I have a new friend on today. His name is Cyrus Mafi. And Cyrus is the chairman of Impact a Life Foundation, and he is married to Maria, who he's been married to since 1997. They have two daughters that are 26 and 22, and they currently reside south of Seattle in a city called Renton, Washington. Cyrus, welcome to the podcast. So glad that you're here.
Thank you, Kyle. Pleasure to be part of this. Very excited.
I'm excited too. So Cyrus and I actually are just getting to know each other. My older brother actually works with Cyrus at Impact a Life Foundation. Before we start talking about Impact a Life Foundation, we want to get into your story, Cyrus. And yeah, we want to jump into your story and hear some of your story so that we have context for what God is doing today in your life, and then the dreams about what you want to see God do that God's giving you. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but you grew up in Tehran, which is in Iran, if I'm pronouncing those correct,
Absolutely.
in the Middle East. And what was your family like that you grew up in? If you were to give us some words that describe that, what was the culture like at home for you?
Culture was very colorful growing up in Iran. Unlike what we see on the news and in the media ever since the revolution in 1979. When I was, I think, about 17 years old when that happened. Life was colorful. My mother was a teacher. My dad was a race car driver. So I grew up kind of hanging out with a bunch of race car drivers, and
Tell me
helping.
about that. What was the race car driver circuit like over there? Was he traveling quite a bit, or was that just in Iran?
No, he was traveling. He was traveling quite a bit in the 70s. As a matter of fact, that was one of the challenges that my mom had because she traveled so much because of racing, as well as the danger that it had. And of course, we all, me and my brothers, looked up to him, and we wanted to follow suit as well. And I had the opportunity to try some of those things as well. So. Yeah, so it was a very colorful upbringing. Colorful as in it was, like any other teenager in a full action environment. It was fun, and then the revolution happened. The
Tell us about
revolution
that.
happened, and it was very interesting. The country was pretty liberal and on the way to achieve a lot of the goals that many of the third world countries have, and the Shah of Iran being on top of that. And when the revolution happened, it was this Islamic group led by an Ayatollah. His name was Khomeini at the time, who was exiled by the king at the time, and he was residing in France. And then a revolution happened, and he came to power. And when my dad was racing, he was part of they called it the Royal Race Club because it was led by Shah's son-in-law. He started the race club in Iran, and my dad at the time was the president of the club.
Oh, wow.
And so, in a way, regardless of thinking whether you are related to the royal family or not, things heated up very quickly. And being connected in any way or shape or form to the royal family was not popular anymore. And I remember I
Wow.
was, the word came to us that the Revolutionary Guards are going to raid our home, and I remember we kind of stood up all night and we had to burn pictures
Oh my
when all
goodness.
the
What
pictures and
of the
everything I
royal
had,
family?
of my dad, taking pictures with the royal family and all of that,
Oh,
so that was kind of interesting. But
how old were you at that point?
I was 17. I was
17.
yeah,
Okay.
I was just finishing high school.
Okay.
And so the revolution happened, and my dad had some connections in Sweden, and he kind of signed up with a race club in Sweden, which was mostly a rally racing. Kind of went back and forth, tried to make it out of the country, and I did that. And I was about 18 years old, and I'm going back to Iran to visit my family, and the war between Iran and Iraq had already started. So I think in 1881, either 80 or 81, Iran went to war with Iraq right in the midst of this revolution thing. So you can just imagine, all of a sudden you're a teenager, and just life is changing rapidly, right? I mean, the revolution happens, you lose a lot of friends, families get divided, right? Some people like the revolutionaries, some people don't. You know, a lot of the dinner table conversations get heated up, and I remember actually I lost a lot of friends during the revolution, and that was kind of
Be-
the start of. Go ahead, yeah, the question.
Well, like, are you saying you lost a lot of friends, like they just didn't want to be friends, or lost friends to the war?
to the to the war and the process of revolution. They died. Yeah.
Wow.
So so it was kind of you sober up very quickly. What's going on? I mean,
I can imagine.
we both have kids, right?
Yeah.
And when your kids reach that age, and you just want to make sure that they just experiencing an innocent life, and you realize, oh, my time was a little bit different when I was their age, right? So it kind
Yeah.
of hits home in different stages of life for you as parents.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so I go
And you
back.
were, I think I had read that you were drafted into the military, correct?
Correct.
And how old were you when you were drafted into the military?
18. So now it's about
18.
a year later. Yeah.
So when you're talking in this context right now of coming home and conversations around the dinner table, are you in the military at this point, or have you been drafted?
Uh, that was before. That was
Okay.
before. Yeah, I was not drafted yet.
Okay.
Uh, but so I get drafted, and I had to join the war
Mm-hmm.
between Iran and Iraq, and then you experience things that no 18-year-old has business experiencing.
Mm. The
Uh,
atrocities of war.
atrocities of war and losing friends. Uh, I mean, I have an easy time talking about it, but I think it was almost way into my 40s. I could not talk about it. I probably I had a PTSD, and I didn't know what PTSD was, right?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
those days PTSD was not necessarily in a forefront of people's mind or diagnosed in any shape. So while I was in war, my mother was diagnosed with cancer, and then she dies.
You didn't have a chance to go
Say
see her
goodbye.
before she died?
I was one
Wow.
day late, Kai.
Oh,
So yeah,
Cyrus.
so I get just gonna age myself real quick. I receive a telegram. If your audience know what telegram is, that my mother is not doing well, and should go back and visit her, and I did. I did, but it was too late. So she passed away the night before I got there, and you know, realizing, okay, so life is going to change even deeper moving forward. She was 42 years old, by the way,
Wow.
and I was 18. So,
How did
uh,
how did that how did that impact you? Obviously, it's a massive impact. It's your mother. But what would you say were some of the things that shifted for you? Did that push you into a greater darkness season, or anger, or denial, or I mean,
It is interesting when if I look at it back. uh, yeah, probably I would say darkness.
hmm,
But at the time, every individual experience, whether it was the revolution, then it was the war, then my mother passed away, it it hardens you in a way that you really don't have enough time to process. You know,
yeah,
they say that there are 5 stages of grief, right? But you have to allow yourself to grieve. You have to mentally sit back and look at the situation and think, okay, this is how I'm going to process that emotionally. When things are happening in a very rapid pace and out of your control, you are just you're just joining the ride, and you cope with it in a way that you know best how, right?
right,
And being in a liberal Muslim, we were not religious. We were not in Islamic faith in any shape or form. And growing up, I remember, every time, when you are preteens, 14, 15, you try to figure out who you are, what the world is about, and what is faith, how does this fit in your life, and that was how I was, and every time I would ask a question about faith, my mom would just point me to the library at the time. I would say, okay, go there and read about it. You know, shape your own understanding of faith. It's
hmm.
going to look like. I don't want you to become a Muslim because you're born in a Muslim family.
That's actually, I would say, in some regards, wise.
Yeah, so it made me actually read and study, and I think by the time I was 18, I already had an understanding of Judaism and Christianity and Hinduism and Buddhism and Islam, and so trying to figure out, where do I fit, you
Yeah,
know, and growing up in a pre-revolutionary Iran, I went to school with Christians. I went to school with Christians, with Jews, with Baha'is, Zoroastrians, and we had friends from India who were Hindus that I went to school with, and so I was exposed to a very colorful faith culture around me as well, and I thought, man, these are awesome people, you know.
yeah,
Christians are awesome, Jews are awesome, Muslims are great, and I thought, why do I even need to belong to a faith? What do I even have to label that? And that was that was my thing. My thing was,
yeah,
whatever you believe that makes you a better person, it's okay with me, as long as you're a good person, right?
yeah,
So, but I believed in God. I believed in God. I believed in a God that really was not in fit in a certain faith description. And when the revolution happened and the war happened and my mother died, that was where I can describe it going deeper and deeper in a dark place, right? I thought there is no God. And if there is, definitely is not a loving God.
yeah,
So so all these books that I have read and people talking about God is just a figment of our imagination, and we have created this source to believe in out of fear and out of pain, and so in that dark place I kind of hardened myself,
yeah.
or the conditions or the environment hardened me. I don't know how much time we have got. This thing
No,
could
we've
go
got
on for
we've
a
got
long time.
it could. Well, let's park there for a minute. So at this point are you 18? Still you're still in
I'm
Tehran.
still I'm still in Tehran, and now I'm in war.
In war. How long were you in the military for?
Uh, 2.5 years,
2.5 years. Okay. So from the time you're 18 until you're 21,
to almost
20,
21, 20,
almost
21.
21.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
you're going through there. Your heart has been hardened, which makes sense. All of the folks who are going to watch this are going to go, well, of course, yes, that's
Hmm.
horrible what you experienced. And then not being able to say goodbye to your mother
Hmm.
compounds all of that and
Hmm.
causes you to start questioning, which I would imagine most people that are going to hear this or watch this are going to go, yeah. And many people question in that season of life, especially like, is there a God? Even myself. Funny
Hmm.
that you said the age 17 is when big transitions happen, because it's similar to me at age 17. But you're in the military, and after you get out of the military, where do you go from there? What's happening at that point?
So at that point, my dad is in a new relationship,
Okay.
and he already has planned to uh, for us to move to Sweden.
Okay.
And I was the only one who could leave the country legally because now I have served in military, right?
Okay.
So one way or the other, we make our way to Sweden. One way or the other, I mean, my brothers, they have to kind of, we have to hire some human traffickers
Wow.
to help them kind of escape the country and go leave the country through Turkey, and from Turkey make their way to Sweden. And
If you
my
guys got caught, what would have happened?
you would depending on the laws of the country, in Turkey, my brother got caught, my younger brother got caught, and then he was in Turkish jail for 5-6 months, and eventually we had to hire a lawyer to
Wow.
get him out. And corruption in our case was a good thing. you could
Worked
you
in your
could
favor.
it worked in our favor at the time, and we could get him out. And otherwise you would have been sent back to the country, to Iran. And at that time, then especially if you're in military age, then yeah, you would be put in jail, or could be worse,
Wow.
whatever.
So
So
you guys eventually make it to Sweden. Brother spends some months in jail.
hmm
So it's not easy what you guys are doing, but then you're in Sweden. And then, as
so
I was
we're in
reading some of yours,
Sweden.
where you ended up going the academic route of going to get your degree
Yeah.
in Norway. Is that
Hmm.
correct?
Correct. So at the time, I had two brothers, one older than me, one younger than me, and a sister who was the youngest. And my dad started a new relationship with his. Eventually, he gets married, and then he had his way of dealing with his own challenges, and our relationship with my dad kind of fell apart. And me and my siblings, we moved to Norway. I follow us. So we moved to Norway, and I feel like, okay, so this is this is a new reality. And by then I'm 22, and so yeah, so I went to school and I got my degree in aeronautics. Also, at the same time, I helped financing my brothers and my sister's education as well. So at the time, I remember I was working, 3, 4 jobs and going to school full time, and and I thought, okay, I'm the master of my own universe. I can't rely on a God. I can't rely on family. I can't rely on people. I can't rely on friends. I think I kind of wanted to isolate myself so I can have
Yep.
enough pity on myself, so I can use that pain as a source of strength, if you will. You know,
Yeah.
it's amazing when God is not part of your spirit, how as human being we try to make it through life, right? You
Yeah, it's
try to
very
hang on.
true. Yeah, it's either, and it's an interesting thing of the journey of pain can either harden the heart or it can bring people to their knees and soften the heart that opens. And so it's fascinating to me the stories of how different people respond to the same scenario.
Mhm.
Even your own siblings, I'd be fascinated to know. Obviously, they were impacted as well, but
Absolutely.
what did that look like for them? And for you, it sounds like it was like I'm going to use this as a driver almost of helping me to what you
Mhm.
said self pity, but yeah, making it a
Mhm.
part of your identity in a
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you're right. Yeah, it impacted my family very differently. Each and every one of us dealt with it in our own way. Now, many years later, life is very different for them as well. But eventually, I graduated and I came to the U.S.
Hmm.
In 1991,
Okay.
and I met my wife Maria. She's from Portugal,
Okay.
and I was hoping that I can come here and start working for Boeing, and,
Yeah.
in engineering field. I had my master's and I wanted to go farther, and so what we're talking about, Kyle, a little bit becomes history lesson too, right?
Yeah.
So 1990, if you remember, it was kind of at the tail end of the ending the Cold War, and Soviet had kind of split, and all of a sudden it was overpopulation of aircraft engineers. No more Cold War, military projects, and a lot of the engineers were kind of integrated into the civil sector,
Yeah.
and I didn't have a green card, and my line of education was also very sensitive. If I wanted to work for, you know, uh, let's say Navy or U.S. Air Force or Boeing or wherever, not only I had to be citizen, but also I had to have security clearance as well.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
so I
So did
started.
that door kind of close then on you?
In a way, no. I was sending my resume to various companies, and in the meantime, I started working at this uh, restaurant slash nightclub under the table, making $4 an hour.
Woohoo! For those of you that are living today and you're young, that was good money back then. Just joking. It wasn't great.
It was something.
It
It
was something. Yeah.
was
Some kind
something.
of provision.
I was a dishwasher, and I remember the owner hired an assistant for me. I was a dishwasher and I had an assistant. And this guy comes in, really cool dude, and he said, "Yo, man, where are you from?" And I said, lived in Norway. "Oh, Norway is cool. What did you do there?" I said, I'm an engineer, and came here. And he starts laughing his tail off. I mean, I said, "Dude, what is so funny?" He says, "Dude, if you're an engineer, I'm the president of this country." I thought,
Oh
touche.
my gosh.
I thought, makes sense. You both are here making $4 an hour,
Oh, that is so funny. That is so funny. So, needless to say, the work pathway, the dream, is not working out like you wanted it to work out.
Right,
And so,
right. Yeah,
so you're a
yeah,
dishwasher.
yeah. I'm a
If
dishwasher.
we, yeah, for sake of time, because I want to get to when you came to faith in Jesus and then impact a life too. I want to give ample time to that as well.
Mhm.
So this during your career pursuits, you're a dishwasher. What's next? Like if we just bullet point it, like do you
Yeah,
end up going to works?
yeah, I go and work at this showroom, furniture and area rug showroom, and
Okay.
and eventually I kind of enjoyed sales and working with people. In
Okay.
1994, I started my own business and
Doing what?
by designing area rugs
Okay.
and producing them in India and Nepal.
Awesome.
And I had a partner, and we started having 4 or 5 locations throughout Seattle and Pacific Northwest. Life is
Okay.
good. You know, I have my own business. Got married to my wife Maria in 1997. We had 2 daughters. My wife was from a Catholic background from
Okay.
Portugal, and but also, her family were pretty much kind of liberal, but we had to get married in Catholic church. And I
Yeah.
thought, okay, so I can get married anywhere,
You like the girl. If you like the girl enough, you'll go get married anywhere.
I know, right? Yeah, so I
Whatever you
did
say,
that.
Maria.
Yeah, whatever you say, Maria, and I met with the priest. I met with
Yeah.
the priest and I passed the test, and I'm not going to say anything about that on the air.
That's great.
So yeah, so we got married, and our kids, growing up, they went to this Christian school, Seattle Christian
Okay.
School
Yeah.
in South Seattle. That was actually how eventually I met Anthony, your brother, in Seattle
Yeah.
Christian.
He's a pretty good guy, and he talks very highly of you.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was how it was in about 2008. I start my import in India. I go to India. I see the pain and the suffering of the people in India, and I feel like, okay, I have to do something about
Mm.
it. So I started Impact the Life Foundation in India in 2008.
And what did that look like? And what were you, when you started Impact to Life, what was the mission that you had in mind?
Go where God is not willing to go,
Wow.
right?
Wow. Wow.
Imagine the flawed theology that I had. I still was not a believer, and I formed this ideology that, guys, God doesn't exist. Get over it. And I took every opportunity that I had to even prove to myself that God doesn't exist, or later on realizing that it was not that I didn't believe that God existed. I just blamed him for everything. And it was
Mm.
easier to deny him than confront him.
Mm.
And so I thought, okay, well, these poor people in India, uh, if there is a God, where is he? Why doesn't he do something about it, right?
That's a great
Uh,
question, though.
and I thought, okay, I can be the man. I can make a change. I can make a difference and help these people. So that was how that was the philosophy behind it, and I started
And was it really
Impact Life
hard at first?
Foundation.
And was it just you, or did you have other people
It was
involved in
just
that?
me.
Or
It was
okay.
just me, and it was kind of connected to my business a little bit, and so that was how we financed it. And my philosophy was powering local leadership and bringing in community participation
Okay.
and help the community doing their work. My view of pain and suffering had shaped to a form that pain does not need pity; it needs empowerment.
Mm.
And you can do anything you want to if you put your mind to it. Poverty is not your identity. It is a condition, and if you trust the strength and the power that you have within you, you can overcome that. And that was what fueled my passion for humanity, if you will.
Are you guys still at Impact? And we'll get to when you end up coming to know the Lord, but are you guys at Impact of Life still in those countries today,
Yes,
working with them?
yes,
How many
yes.
countries are you guys in?
Right now, too, India and Sierra Leone in West
Sierra Leone.
Africa.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Wow. Interesting. It's just interesting to think in those ways, because those lines of thought or even philosophies, when you plug Jesus into that, obviously it creates an empowerment that changes everything. It's like the right, like poverty is not your identity. Very
Yeah,
true.
very true.
But many people make that their identity. But when you understand that as a Jesus follower,
Yeah,
that starts to set you free. But when you understand that without Jesus, there's freedom to that truth, but there's something
yeah,
missing.
yeah. Exactly. That is so true.
It's almost like the Lord was designing something for him to fill.
We watched the movie the other day. It was about a man of faith, and somebody asked him if you were to go back 10 years and have another week in your life, what would you change? And he chose something, and he went back. And I'm not going to get into it. And after the movie, my wife asked me, she said, Cyrus, if you had to go back with your story, with your journey, where would you go and what would you change? And I said, Maria, absolutely nothing. I
Wow.
would not go back and change anything, because that was the journey that the Lord had designed for me. Every single piece of my experience was the times that I would close the door on Jesus, who was sitting on the porch giggling and say, I have you exactly where I want you. One day, you will open the door and you will come through it, and I will waiting for you on the porch. And just that is just a fact. So I I don't I I don't regret it, and I would not
Yeah.
change anything.
Yeah. Because
So
ultimately it led you to where you are today.
absolutely.
Man, that is I think that speaks, and I'll just take a moment here, I think, to expand on that thought a little bit for anybody who's watching. Because Cyrus is sharing here, I want to encourage you in this, that God can redeem all the parts of your story, even the painful parts. And for some of you maybe that are watching that are struggling with, I don't understand why that happened, or frustration with the Lord about some of that stuff, I would encourage you to invite the Holy Spirit into that part of your story and ask God to do the work that only He can do in that story, in that part of your story, because ultimately the Lord wants to bring healing to your heart in the depths, even in the things that you're like, so painful, I don't even want to touch it, or live in denial. God wants to bring healing to that part of your story. And Cyrus, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. It's from your own story, or if that was just something that God supernaturally was able to do in your own heart and mind, if there was a little bit of process to that.
I agree with you. I would just add to it that my journey of faith, not not to heal,
Mm,
but allow the healer to do his work.
yeah,
If you allow the healer to work through you, in the process, you will be healed.
that's so good.
And by become the hand of the healer, you heal. You
That's
know.
so good.
So I promised myself that I'm not going to get emotional during this podcast, but
That's okay. Get emotional. You're good. If
you
you get
know,
emotional, I'll get emotional, and we'll just have a cry fest.
let's do it. Uh, you know, God is not in the business of making miracles in our lives. God is in the business of make us the miracle.
That's so good.
And when you believe in that, when you receive that, then uh, pain becomes to get closer to the Lord, right?
Mm,
Pain is no longer something that happens to you. Adversity is no longer something that happens to you. The poverty and atrocities of life, the fragility of brokenness doesn't happen to us anymore. It becomes the moment that the disciples ask Jesus, Lord, why is this man blind? Is it because of his sin or because of
Mm.
his parents? And Jesus says, neither. He is blind because the work of God is going to be displayed. And I think if I look at that the freedom of having God is that the purpose of everything that we go through is to understand how God can display his work through us,
Mm.
right? And when that happens, self-pity is no longer part of the equation. If you ask me 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I received the Lord in 2013. Before that, if you asked me about pain, I would have had a very different description of it. Today, when you ask, yeah, it is natural when you're 17, 18, and you go through that, and how hard. I mean, no teenager, no 18-year-old should go through this. And my answer would be, why not? Why shouldn't I go?
Mm.
Why shouldn't? Why?
Mm.
Life is not about happiness. Life is about finding the joy in the circumstances that is beyond you, right? So,
Wow.
but every teenager, every 18-year-old, whoever that is listening to this podcast,
Yeah.
don't pursue happiness, pursue joy.
Yeah.
Don't.
It triggers the scripture, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. Yeah. Different than happiness.
So, 2008, I started this foundation, humanitarian outreach in India. By then, business is booming, is great. I have, businesses throughout the Northwest, and then the recession happened.
Mm.
The recession happens, and things are getting tougher and tougher. And I feel that getting forced to, at that time now I have orphanages that I support in Nepal and villages who we adopted in India, and all of them sponsored financially by my business. And it was getting hard, and the business was getting hard. Had to close some of the businesses out of state and come up, bring it closer to home. It impacted my relationship in the family. It's getting tougher and tougher. And then my daughter, sophomore at that time, she's going to this intercession trip to Catalina Island, and it's 7 days hike, no electronics, no digital anything of sort, and arranged by this Bible teacher called, his name was Dan Edmondson. Eventually, he joins me in my ministry later on. So
It's awesome.
My wife says, Cyrus, you have to go with Ariana. I said, Maria, I'm 48 years old. I cannot hike with a bunch of teenagers for 7 days and no cell phone, no connection to business. It's just not, it's not going to happen. She said, Cyrus, if you don't go, Ariana is not going. I said, Maria, what do I have in common with the Bible teacher? I mean, what are we going to talk about for 7 days? Just don't push me to that. She says, Cyrus, you need a break too. You need a mental break. You need to go. It's good for you. Trust me. Just don't embarrass me.
That's so great. Way to go,
Yeah.
Maria.
Way to go, Maria. I said, honey, okay. So I go on that trip. And I don't know, long story short, 7 days later, everybody is convinced that this trip is about me, more so than about those kids.
Wow.
I go to that trip as a Saul, and I come back as a Paul. It was an amazing, amazing trip. I met my today's pastor, Pastor Zach, during that trip. He's a young GQ, kind of like in his late 20s. He just had planted a church. He just had come back from Sierra Leone. And I see him in this trip, and I think he's a high school kid. I mean, I just thought he probably just graduated or something. And then I realized that, okay, he's a pastor. He was a graduate from Seattle Christian as well. During that trip, I talked to Dan Edmondson, I talked to Zach, and apparently they had their own tent conversation at night. And, guys, we don't think this Cyrus guy, he knows Jesus. So they pray for me. And in my conversation, with the kids, I just share how I was when I was in high school, right? And I realized kids are kids regardless of what decade you're in or what country or what geographical location. Our aspirations, our needs, our fears are very much the same. So without necessarily going into faith, I just shared my experience as a high schooler, and created a bond with those kids. And we come back from Catalina. We are in Long Beach. The kids are going to visit this aquarium. And Pastor Zach, he loves In-N-Out Burger. And he says, Cyrus, let's go and buy In-N-Out Burger for all the kids. I say, yeah, let's do it. I mean, we don't have tickets for the aquarium. Let's go. And Dan Edmondson says, well, guys, I don't have money for the cab, so you guys have to walk. Oh, that's okay. We can walk. It's 45 minutes walk. Let's do it. Zach says, yeah, I need to know about your story. So we are walking and in Long Beach streets, and I share with him what we just shared.
Wow.
And towards the end of that walk, I was sharing with him the challenges about not the ministry, but the foundation at the time, and forcing to close some of the orphanages. And he turns around and asks me, Cyrus, your relationship with the Lord is your relationship with the Lord, has nothing to do with me. But I want you to know that it is not your job to save the world. It is God's. And I just want to invite you to drop that shield and allow God in your spirit. Kyle, it was a spring break time, so the daffodils were kind of blooming. On a sidewalk, these daffodils start shining bright yellow, neon yellow. I've never seen anything before or since. And I say, Zach, look at these daffodils. And he thinks I'm dodging the question. He says, okay, well, they're daffodils, all right? I said, no, look at them. They're so bright. He says, okay, Cyrus, they're bright. He just didn't know what to do. And I couldn't understand why he cannot see what I see and get excited about it.
Right.
And the words came to me. I said, how do I do that? He says, do what? I said, how do I receive Jesus? He says, my gosh, Cyrus, are you telling me you're receiving Jesus? I said, yes. He says, oh, I can't hardly wait to go back and share it with Dan Edmondson and the kids. I knew it. I knew this is going to happen. I said, no, not going back. Right now, right here. How do we do it? Confess to your sins and receive Jesus. In the middle of the street, I don't forget, I was just screaming my confession.
Wow.
I was screaming, raising my hands, and tears are pouring down. Kyle, when my mother passed away, my tears dried. I never cried ever since. And now I cannot stop crying. And Zach starts crying with me, and we embrace. And the Paul in me was born and replaced Saul. Overnight, I could sit for hours and tell you why God didn't exist. And just like that, I could sit and talk for hours about why God exists and why He is there. Seriously, I'm not joking with you. It was just It had nothing to do with me. I did not go on that trip seeking God, seeking faith. I just went there because my wife pushed me. And we come back, we share with the guys, with the kids, and everybody says, "Didn't I tell you? Didn't I tell you this trip is about Cyrus?" And throughout the trip, it was like God had designed all of this. And I thought, and Dan Edmondson, Zach, and myself standing in front of that parking lot in front of the aquarium, and they're praying for me. I don't even know how to pray and what to say. And they say, God, you brought us together at this junction of life, and you have plans for us. We don't know what yet, but you have plans. A year later, I'm in Africa. Dan Edmondson joins me to Africa, and we started a Christian school in Africa with Dan Edmondson's help. I joined Zach's church, and now, over 10 years later, we started a school that was about 20. Today, there is a school with 200 kids,
Awesome.
over 7,000 life-saving surgeries, agriculture, community transformation, and all these three people the Lord has used for his purposes. And I can take a look and sit back and say, God, what an amazing experience to be part of your story. I
So good.
I take every single pain in the past, knowing that you have been in it, and be grateful that no matter how often I closed the door on him, he never gave up on me. And the beauty of it is that he doesn't give up on anybody. He doesn't give up on anybody, regardless
That's
of
so
us.
good.
Yeah.
So good, Cyrus.
Yeah.
Man. And if is listening to this or watching this right now, I want to reiterate what Cyrus said. Maybe you even grew up in a religious family and you think, oh, I'm a Christian or I'm a this or I'm a that, but really you don't have relationship with the Lord. I want to encourage you in the simplicity of it. Just like with Cyrus, God was knocking on Cyrus's heart and hanging around and pursuing Cyrus all throughout his life and his story. And I want to say the same is true for you because God doesn't quit. He loves you. And I think there's a simple decision you can make to turn to him today. And like Cyrus, the question is how do I do that? Well, it's confessing your sins and that you need him and receiving what Jesus did on the cross for you to pay for those sins, and then rising 3 days later to conquer death on your behalf, to restore you to relationship with God. And you could do that today with a really, really simple prayer of, God, I admit I'm a sinner and I want you to save me. Fill me with the Holy Spirit and show me how to follow you. And then I want to encourage you to find somebody who is already following Jesus so that you can follow him too. But Cyrus's story is a testimony of the goodness of God, even in the midst of the pain that's in the world, in our story. And so,
Amen.
yeah. Cyrus, I want to end with this. I would imagine that you have dreams in your heart about what you desire to see God do, whether it's Sierra Leone or India, or maybe it's even greater. But what would be, if you could say it here in the next 2 minutes, what would be your God-sized dream of how you want God to move in and through your life or the organization of Impact a Life? What does that look like?
For him to finish the work he started in me. That is the dream. When you replace who you are with who God is in you, your dreams become limitless. When we started our ministry in Africa, we had no idea how big it's gonna be and how many people it's going to impact. Now, between India and Africa, we serve over 70,000 people and have experienced over 8,000 baptisms. My dream is that God will continue using me to the magnitude that He sees fit His story and grow me near to Him in the process. I don't know where this ministry is going to go because honestly, I care less. I care less with where this ministry is going to go, not because it is not dear to me, it is because it is His. And
That's good.
and in 10 years, we could be in many other countries. It doesn't matter. We don't measure success by any of the things that I shared with you. If one single person through our stories is becoming a vessel of God, our mission is accomplished.
That's awesome.
God is going to use individuals for His glory. The moment I say I want my dream, then I become who I was. I'm like an addict.
Yeah.
I cannot think like that anymore. I cannot think about what my dream is. I continually seek what God's plan for me is, and I'm praying every day that I would fit that. That way, I'm very selfish. I want to fit in His vision for me. I know
That's
if I
awesome.
don't, somebody else would, and that's great. And that is great if He wants to use somebody else, but I want to be the first pick.
That's awesome. That's great perspective. I love that. Okay. Where can people, if they want to learn more about Impact a Life Foundation, where can they find Impact a Life and learn more about how to maybe follow what's going on with Impact a Life? Where can they find that?
Great. Yeah. Our website is a great place to start. www.impactalife.org.
Okay.
We are on Instagram and Facebook. If you want to follow our stories, you can go online and sign up for our newsletters. And we love to share God's stories. We love to share what God is doing. We really actually boast about everything that God is doing through Impact the Life Foundation in Africa and India. And I would love for you guys, if this podcast impacts you, pray that someday you would sit with somebody like Kyle and share your story and hoping that your story would impact somebody else and pray for us. Pray for us that we will continue fighting a good fight.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, Cyrus, for sharing your story. Thank you to all of you that joined us today and watched. If you liked what you hear today, please subscribe, share, and like this episode. Helps us out big time. All right, friends, take care, and we will see you in the next episode.